you have someone like that who has disrespected you so much and talks so much when you know what's going to happen, bro, eat that. Eat that. You need to eat that. He needs to be fed. He needs to eat that. So shut the up and take that L. And with that, welcome to Early Stoppage, a show where the news of the day is usually given just enough time, but sometimes not enough. If this is your first time stopping by, we thank you. And get ready for something you won't find anywhere else. I'm John Franklin. I'm joined, as always, by the godfather of Fight Night Picks, Craig Allen. Craig, it's International Podcasters Day, and we are an international podcast. So despite all the behind-the-scenes strife, we had to put aside our differences and come together. We hold several distinctions as a podcast. As far as I know, we're the only podcast with a Canadian-American host. And we have the largest age difference between hosts. You are 15, and I just turned 60. Craig, what do you have to say to the audience on this, what is International Podcasters Day?
Thanks for bringing me in, Dad. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to this show. I mean, we've been doing this show for a while, since before it was on Fight Night Picks, but not since before Fight Night Picks. It's something that I always look forward to. Sometimes schedules don't align, but I'm just glad that we can do it this week because we've got a lot of topics. And if I bleeped out the cursing at the start of the show, let the F-bombs fly because we've got more and more coming as the show goes on. I'm fired up this week, and I'm really looking forward to this one.
Craig mentioned the dark ages of the podcast. Okay, all right, Craig. On this episode of Early Stoppage, we talk Conor and Poirier, Teddy and Francis, and who deserves to get their roses. We begin with Jan Blachowicz, the Polish one-time journeyman, has the gold around his waist and the future at his feet. He knocked Dominic Reyes silly to grab the belt and has called out both John Jones and Daniel Cormier. Side note, neither are fighters in the light heavyweight division. One doesn't even fight anymore. So the question here, Craig, is if not those two, then who should be next for Jan Blachowicz?
To me, it's a simple answer. I mean, you can go one of two different ways if you want to be a hipster. You can go with old man consistency, if you want to call him that, Glover Teixeira, Connecticut's adopted son, Glover Teixeira, that just turns back the hands of time every time he goes in there and fights. But he looked amazing against Anthony Smith the last time we saw him. And who's he booked to fight? Thiago Santos. It's got to be the winner of that fight. To me, I think Thiago Santos has a more compelling case. You could automatically throw him into a title fight just because of the fact that he knocked out Blachowicz, so you have the inherent rematch there. But the fact that he's the only fighter to have that split decision distinction against John Jones, so you can make that case for him, even more so than the Dominic Reyes case. So for me personally, I think it's got to be either the winner of that fight or throw Santos right in there because you saw what happened in the Santos fight. He knocked out Blachowicz in the third round. Now, since then, Blachowicz has gone on to win 4 in a row, 3 of the 4 by finish. The Jacare fight was a bit of a blip on the radar. For me, it's Santos. If not Santos, then it's got to be Glover Teixeira.
Let's have some fun. I think that, we could say Thiago Santos. I mean, that's the easy one. First of all, can somebody get me Khamzat Chimaev's number? This guy's willing to fight in any weight class. Dana thinks he's a star. Let's throw him in it. Now, let's not do that. So when I look up and down these rankings, Craig, as I often do, I see, the guys you're talking about. I see Reyes. He obviously doesn't deserve to get back in there. Santos makes a lot of sense. Let's go outside the box. Talk me out of Yuri Prochka getting this title shot. Talk me out of it.
Yeah, he had one fight in the UFC. He got hit a lot by Volkan Oezdemir, and then he knocked Volkan Oezdemir out. The last time I checked, Volkan Oezdemir ain't too hot nowadays.
Details. All right, I'm with you. Let's go with Thiago Santos.
All right, fair enough. All right, so, John, let's move on, and this is the hottest topic of the week. I don't care. You can take your Adesanyas. You can have your Carlos Condits. This is something that's got me fired up. And for some reason in the year 2020, Conor McGregor was trying to set up a fight with Diego Sanchez after he beat Cowboy Cerrone in January. And if you're not aware, McGregor shared his DMs with Dana White. And in those DMs, Dana said it just said 100,000, always keep my word with you. That doesn't make any sense to me. So that's strike one against Dana White. I 100,000 keep my word with you, Conor. I do. That's how normal people talk, right, John? So that's the first slight against Dana. Second thing, after that, Dana, when he got quizzed on it after UFC 253, he says that Conor broke the man code. He did say that these are things that happen between men and women, but that broke the man code, and that's one of the dirtiest things you can do. All right, don't publish the DMs. I'm not going to throw John Franklin under the bus for the DMs that we have where we talk about Bellator prelim fighters. But then after, it just gets weird because if you actually watched Dana White's, now they have this new rebranded series. It's basically a plug for Abu Dhabi and go visit the United Arab Emirates. But it's no longer Dana White's looking for a fight. It's Dana White's looking forward to a fight where they go out and do all the cool stuff in Abu Dhabi. So on that show that they posted before UFC 253, there was like a candid camera where Joshua Fabia walks up to Matt Serra and Dean Thomas when they're having breakfast, and Fabia confronts Matt Serra because of a segment that he had on his radio show with Jim Norton, where he talked about Joshua Fabia, but he didn't use his name, and he should have known his name. They go back and forth, and then after that happens, and this is on this Dana White's looking FWD to a fight, because they can't spell it forward. That's too many characters. So then Dana goes on this whole, there's this montage, well, Matt Serra doesn't take shit from anybody. The fights just come to him. And then Matt Serra says, oh, I'm the diehard of the world. I'm the John McClane. Trouble finds me. So, John, what's the scoop here? Am I overreacting, seeing a glaring double standard? Or, like, which one's worse of the two here?
Do we have a new president yet? Because I feel like that's the longest intro. We've had to have election day by now. That's the longest intro I've had. It's International Podcasters Day. So I'll give you a little bit of leeway on that one. But yeah, listen, Craig, I'm not talking out of school, and this is inside baseball, but I've been known to share a screenshot or two with you. So my usage of the man code, listen, Dana can say that Conor broke man code all he wants. Dana will divulge conversations he has with fighters whenever it benefits him in whatever way. Did he publish a DM? No. But, it depends on what unwritten rule book you're reading from at the time that determines whether or not this was right or wrong. I think that the Josh Fabia thing, in the end, it's always going to come down to, Dana seems a little heartbroken on this one. Dana's like, I thought me and Conor were cooler. He's sharing my DMs. That's man code, dude. Please, you and this guy are in negotiations. When you met Conor, he was just off the welfare line. Now you guys are kind of contemporaries. I mean, Conor doesn't have Dana money, but Conor can get into any place Dana can get in because of Dana's money. So they're peers now. Conor doesn't look at him like a boss. He looks at him as like a business partner. So if you're going to lecture Conor McGregor, he's going to take his business elsewhere. If you don't think he can do it, he already did it once. He talked you into the Floyd Mayweather fight. He's making eyes at Manny Pacquiao, which we'll get into later. I do think it's a double standard. Josh Fabia is a punchline. So, of course, whatever you do with him, everybody's going to be fine with it. I think it was disrespectful to sort of surreptitiously film Fabia and then release it. But, that's the way the UFC does business. When it's something against them, that's the most egregious thing they've ever heard of. When it's in their favor, they don't care.
And then, I didn't see, and I'd have to go back and watch the tape, but when Diego Sanchez walked out, I'm pretty sure the conversation was, where's Josh Fabia? Nobody sees Joshua Fabia. Stephan Bonner was front and center for that fight, which was the weirdest thing ever. But to me, it was so weird. It was such a double standard. It riled me right up. Yeah, you can talk whatever you want to about Conor McGregor. You can do this, you can do that. But if you say that after the fact, where you publish this video that was taken on a cell phone under a table, and you're trying to, make Fabia look like a bad guy. He also looked a little pedantic when Matt Serra tried to pronounce Michel Pereira's name, and he called him Pereira. And then Fabia goes, oh, Pereira? What, are you making fun of the way I pronounce it? No, I just couldn't hear you. That's a classic, yeah, you got me. But it was so stupid to me, and I'm still upset about it. It's just the way of the world in 2020. People want to fight Diego Sanchez. People posting videos under tables.
It's rough. All right, let's move on to another way of the world in 2020, which is Colby Covington. Listen, I thought before the Colby Covington fight that, this is a fight that you could promote, but it's toxic. We've talked about toxic fights before. Should they be made? Khabib and Connor's toxic. There's other fights that have just gotten to the point, DC and Jones. They just went so far that do you really want to put these guys together? So in the aftermath of Colby Covington's victory, he went out and said a lot of things when he was talking to Kamaru Usman that were raised the ears of people who think that Colby Covington might be a racist himself, or at the very least a racist sympathizer. In response to this, Dana White says we don't muzzle anybody, and clearly each of them have ties to the president. Colby was at the debate, but this shtick keeps going farther and farther with no sign that anyone's letting up. Is it time to finally sit down and reassess some of the things that have been said before things get any worse? And I guess an extension to that question would be, is this a gimmick, or is this Colby, or where do we draw the lines?
I don't know anymore, and it's too tough a question to answer. We've kind of asked this question like over and over. It seems like every Covington fight we have to ask this question, and we have, and we've talked about it. It's toxic. It shouldn't happen. It's just like, it seems like you're going too far. You never wanted to ever mix politics and sports. Well, now they broke that wall and they're just going all in on it. And who cares? I mean, the president of the United States was talking about Ali Abdelaziz at one point in a rally. Like, how crazy is that in 2020? I mean, Mike Russell's probably not very happy about it. I can tell you that much. But in terms of just boiling this down and just the quote of, we won't muzzle anybody, you're free to speak your mind. What about Leslie Smith when she was really looking to spearhead Project Spearhead? She was all gung-ho about a union, incredibly articulate, said all the right things, won a fight, and then the UFC said, all right, see you later. Forget about that. Like, they have a tendency to maybe silence or quiet some people that don't have the same values as the company or as the president. I mean, that's just a fact. So, you look at the company men and women that get the bigger spots, the bigger spotlight. If you're not in agreement with the way that they do things, they'll just push you out the door. I mean, it's not like you have a union behind you, right? So in terms of just this, I'm not going to delve too far into it. But just to answer the final question, is it finally time to sit down and reassess some things? I think it is, but I think when you've got Dana White driving the truck, I mean, it's just going to keep going down the road, and they're not going to change anything.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, and I guess one of the things that I've said forever is, if you're not a racist, why are you comfortable being portrayed as one in any way, even by yourself? Like, to own a gimmick of being a racist, to own a gimmick of someone that people don't like. People didn't like Roddy Piper. People didn't like Ric Flair.
Well, Canadians like Roddy Piper,
right? But not because they were racist, because they just got people fired up. And I think that when I look at this situation, I'm with you. You say that you guys you don't muzzle anyone. Well, tell Stitch Duran that. You say that you don't muzzle anybody. Tell friend of the show Brendan Schaub that. Because when these guys were critical about stuff like the Reebok deal, then next thing you know, they're out the door. Now, a little bit that was Brendan Schaub choosing to leave, and a little bit that was Dana White saying we don't need you anymore. But I think that you're right in the sense that you can't say that you're all about it. The thing that I compare it to is when someone says stick to sports. When it's a Republican saying it to someone who's liberal, it's like, hey, stick to sports. Until it's Covington, and until it's Breeze, and until it's Masvidal. Like, Masvidal can run around and campaign for Trump, but if LeBron says something, it's shut up and dribble. So I think that it just matters who the person is that's saying it. The UFC, I think, is really they're setting a poor precedent here, and I think that if someone decides to take them to task, I mean, we talked about it in our last episode, or maybe the one before, or start the conversation about Izzy and Dana being on a collision course, and I think that it almost came to a head in that Paulo Costa press conference, because they asked Dana about Colby Covington, and Israel Adesanya was sitting right there. And that's just, how does he feel that day? Does Israel feel like putting Dana on blast, or does he not? That day he chose not to. The next time he might choose to, as he gains popularity and power and all those sort of things. So yeah, I think it's definitely time to chill. The one thing that Dana has going for him is you can put a fighter on ice. If he doesn't fight for a while, people tend to forget. So you let it die down. I would guess, and I mean, obviously this is for a lot of reasons, but I would guess that we won't see Colby Covington before the election, obviously, because that's super soon. But like, we're gonna let the whole situation die down a little bit. And I bet you if Joe Biden wins, Kobe might find a new gimmick.
Well, we'll have to wait and see what happens. And let's go back a little bit. So, John, when Conor McGregor isn't posting his DMs with Dana White, it seems like he's got a lot on his plate. He's deciding whether he's going to fight that guy that sang the song "Sometimes When We Touch," Manny Pacquiao, or he's going to have an exhibition fight against Dustin Poirier over in Dublin. And today it seems like the latter is more of a possibility and maybe inside the octagon. And John, as we record this, it was just tweeted out by Brett Okamoto. Per sources, UFC did formally offer Conor McGregor a fight against Dustin Poirier this week, as Dana White told Barstool Sports. Sent a bout agreement Tuesday, I'm told, does not mean the fight is done, not even close, but the contract was offered for the bout. So if you're Dana White, you're mad about the DMs, but does it make more sense to have a rematch for McGregor with Poirier inside the octagon or a boxing fight with Manny Pacquiao at this point?
Well, I think that one of the problems with the UFC right now is they don't know how to handle their stars. They don't know what to do with Jorge Masvidal. They protect him. Putting him on short notice with Kamaru Usman is the craziest thing in the world when you could have spent weeks promoting that fight. So I know they were trying to save the card and get the pay-per-view number where they wanted to be, and I get that. I think that we know that if Conor fights Manny Pacquiao, most of us, Robin Black aside and Brendan Schaub aside, think that Manny Pacquiao would win. But what Manny Pacquiao will also do, because Manny Pacquiao is as smart as Floyd Mayweather is, and he's got much more debt than Floyd Mayweather does, is he knows that a Conor McGregor, Manny Pacquiao 2 only happens if Conor looks okay. So my guess would be, if you're in the camp that thinks Floyd Mayweather carried Conor to their boxing match, Manny Pacquiao will carry Conor as well. So if you want Conor to look good and kind of kick the can down the road a little bit, then you go Pacquiao. And listen, there's things that Conor can do without you. The thing that I like about the move here by the UFC was the UFC says, oh, you want to do something with Dustin Poirier without us, where we have no stake in it? We'll just offer you that fight. And if you're the UFC, you can continue to do that. You want to fight Manny Pacquiao? We need to cut. You want to fight? So what they're doing is it's a stare down. Conor's saying, I can exist without you. And the UFC saying, no, you can't. So from that perspective, I don't know which makes more sense to Dana. I would probably say the rematch with Poirier.
There's nothing that gets my dick limper than somebody talking about a fucking exhibition fight. How fucking stupid is that? Mike Tyson, Roy Jones, exhibition fight. There might be headgear involved. Then we're going to have Conor and Dustin in an exhibition fight. Oh, we're just going to play around. We're just going to jab and move around, and we're going to raise money for charity. Nobody wants to fucking see that. Give me a break. There aren't hardcore fans that watch BKFC that would want to watch an exhibition fight. Now, yes, it's Conor McGregor. And I think the best fight for Conor McGregor in MMA is a Poirier rematch. Poirier is so much better than he was at that point in his career at featherweight. And he's a lot better of a lightweight. Same thing could possibly be said for Conor McGregor as well. But to me, you want the money fight, you make the fight with Manny Pacquiao. Senator Manny Pacquiao. Basketball star Manny Pacquiao. And I had the chance, and there's going to be a little bit of an outside influence here from another MMA show, but I had the chance to watch Mortal Kombat earlier this week, and Brian Campbell actually did put it best. I mean, Manny Pacquiao would beat the piss out of Conor McGregor. He would beat the wheels off him. Look at the fight that he had against Keith Thurman. Matt's a really big Manny Pacquiao fan. Again, Matt and I, incredibly huge casual boxing fans. We only watch the big fights, and Matt really is a Pacquiao fan. And yeah, in that fight, maybe Pacquiao, how's the injuries, this and that. He looked great against a good contender. So I'd be fine with the Pacquiao fight. I'd sooner see the boxing fight actually first, so you can kind of create a little bit of buzz. And then let UFC 254 play out, Khabib Gaethje. And then maybe, again, you can pop in, another interim belt. You got Conor McGregor, former champ. You got Dustin Poirier, former interim champ. Bam, slap the interim belt on that. Give me my position in the company already.
I second that. Give Craig a position in the company, right? Either that or where's our Spotify deal, goddammit? Let's go. All right, Craig.
You can't muzzle us.
You cannot muzzle us. No. You go on strike. I'll still talk about whatever we want. All right, Craig. One of the Gummo brothers, let's go with Bryant, took the initiative to pull back the curtain with HBO on Real Sports by looking deeper into the world of weight cutting. Ramsey Nijem was one of the fighters profiled among others. And in his words, I just am physically killing myself, literally killing myself trying to get to this weight. And by the time we get to fight, I don't even fucking care. Will this show work in changing the minds of commissions or young fighters?
No, you know what it's going to do? And I'm not going on like a political thing here. This is going to hit hard with the viewers that watch HBO, that like Bryant Gumbel and they like real sports, but that aren't combat fans. This is going to rile up the Meryl Streeps of the world, who said that, mixed martial arts are not the arts. But this is going to really rile up a section of the population that aren't hardcore MMA fans because they're not aware of this. Hopefully you didn't tune out at the start. Because people outside of MMA and outside of combat sports probably aren't totally aware of the issues, the dangers, and how prevalent weight cutting actually is. You and I know how bad it is. And you and I we can probably agree that, Pettis moves up from 55 to 70, looks a lot healthier. That's just one example of many. Anthony Smith's the best example. So at 85, moves up to 205. Yeah, the competition might not have been the best, but he said it himself. It worked out for his endocrine system. He was able to kind of stabilize a lot better, and the weight cut wasn't as big of an issue, and he didn't have to worry about it as much going into his fights, and that got him to pretty well the pinnacle. I mean, he had a decision against John Jones. He lost it. So to me, it's not going to change the minds of commissions or young fighters at all. It's more likely going to appeal to people that aren't the most hardcore of hardcore combat sports people. And then they're going to cause a ruckus about it on social media. Maybe that'll create some change. I doubt it will, though.
If I know you like I think I know you, you're going to hate this answer.
That's fair.
So let's pick a guy who is in the NBA, right? He's the sixth man of the year, Lou Williams, whoever he is, one of these guys that comes off the bench.
Montrezl
Harrell.
Come on, I know NBA.
Montrezl Harrell could go to the G League and destroy. Montrezl Harrell could go to the Italian League or the Turkish League or where Luka Doncic used to play and destroy. He's in the NBA. So listen, I think weight cutting is a problem in this sport. But you are looking for a competitive advantage. If you are fighting at a weight that is not your natural weight. So if you're looking for sympathy from me for trying to get down to a weight and then rehydrate closer to your natural weight, listen, if you want to fight at 70, walk around at 70. If you want to fight at 85, walk around at 85. Okay? Don't tell me that these weight cuts are destroying you when you're trying to get to a weight class that you don't walk around at. Right? I'm going to put this in civilian terms. If I want to look great for the Christmas picture, I better be damn near the weight that I want to be in that Christmas picture on Thanksgiving. Or it's going to be a hell of a month before that Christmas picture. This is my point. If that's the weight.
Well, no, your point's moot here because we're an international MMA podcast, and I know I upset you there. But Thanksgiving is in less than 2 weeks. Or just about 2 weeks. So you're telling me I have to go from all the way in the early October until Christmas in that kind of shape? Are you crazy?
It's unfair.
It is unfair. All right, let's move on. And before you know it, John, we'll be on to our next pay-per-view card. It's October 24th after Canadian Thanksgiving. And Fight Island's going to play host to a lightweight title unification bout between Khabib Nurmagomedov and Justin Gaethje, with Bellator's main guy for the last decade, Mr. Bellator, Michael Chandler, serving as the alternate to the fight. So let's break it down from a couple angles quickly. Kevin Lee said on MMA on SiriusXM that it was basically a slight on Bellator by having Chandler that high up in the rankings in general, which to me seems like a slight on Kevin Lee's brother because Keith Lee just signed with Bellator and had his first fight with him not long ago. Dan Hooker went on Submission Radio and said that he wants to be the guy that knees Chandler's head off or chin off and send him back to the B leagues, like the G leagues, but Bellator's the B leagues. How clever. I bet Dan Hooker doesn't follow the G League or the NBA. So the question here is it a power move by the UFC putting Chandler in this spot? Because if he gets in and loses, it shows that he wasn't that good and Bellator competition's not that great. Or is it the UFC quietly seeding that sometimes the best talent isn't always found in the octagon, like they had with Eddie Alvarez coming from Bellator to the UFC, or Justin Gaethje from PFL to the UFC, or I guess World Series?
I think it's a power move. I think that not everyone is. I think they know Chandler's a real guy, or they wouldn't have gone after him. But I don't think that they know exactly where he fits in that division. And the easiest way to sort of trick everyone into thinking that he's a stud is line him up with the studs. So if he loses to Khabib Nurmagomedov, they can just say, well, everybody loses to Khabib Nurmagomedov. If he's losing to one of the top, 55ers in the world, it doesn't look like he doesn't belong here. It looks like he just went against somebody who loses to everybody. So I think that's their way of hiding. And if he beats Khabib or Justin Gaethje or anybody else, then we're like, it's a bonus. But I think that they're banking on, we don't quite know what we have here yet. We know he can fight. He went, round and round with Eddie Alvarez years ago. I mean, the guy's a stud. We don't quite know where he's at. So let's put him up near the top. That way we can, because we've talked about this 1,000 times, the whole name versus the game, right? Right now, Michael Chandler's name is higher than his game. So you got to take advantage of his name before you know exactly where his game's at.
So they just put out, and I say they, the UFC, before we started a couple hours ago, put out an article by Thomas Gerbasi, and it's basically, welcome to the UFC, Michael Chandler. And it goes through his list of accolades. What do they have in the top paragraph? He beat former UFC lightweight champions Eddie Alvarez, beat him once, but he also lost to him. And Benson Henderson. He beat Benson Henderson in 2020. What the fuck does that mean to anything at the top of the UFC's lightweight division? Doesn't mean fucking anything. Look at Michael. And listen, I have to preface this. If you're new on the Fight Night Picks train and you're one of those guys, and I see you every week in the comments, guys, do Bellator, do Bellator. Inside baseball, we used to do Bellator. Nobody watched. I'm still a big Bellator guy, so I'll put my Bellator cap on here. I remember Bellator NYC when Chandler lost the premise and he frigged up his, that nerve in his foot. He kept stumbling around. So he loses that fight. Then he beats Goto Yamauchi. Yamauchi's actually a really good fighter. I wish he fought more. Then he beat Brandon Gertz, and that fight didn't make any sense because Brandon Gertz isn't on that level. Then he beat Brent Primus. He got caught and almost finished early in that fight. Primus had his back. It was sketchy. Then he gets knocked out by Patricio Pitbull. That's where the question marks come in because Patricio Pitbull's a 45er. I know he's a double champ, 45er. Then he beats Sidney Outlaw, not on Michael Chandler's level. You think the UFC, and that fight happened at the very end of 2019. It was like that New Year's Eve cross-promotion rise in Bellator. Do you think the UFC would have brought in Sidney Outlaw at the end of 2019 and matched him up with the top 10, the top 15, even the top 25 of the UFC's lightweight division? No, they wouldn't have. It's an unknown commodity of what you get from Michael Chandler in 2020. And if he actually gets himself into this fight, he's going to lose to Gaethje. He's definitely going to lose to Khabib. And I don't know how he's going to fare against the top competition in the UFC. So I think it's more of a slight to say, hey, you guys bitched and moaned about, wow, we should have signed Brendan Loughnane. And Dana White said, oh, we have the best talent in the world. Well, Chandler goes out there and lays an egg against one of these top guys. It proves Dana's point. So I think it's a low risk type of signing for them.
All right, let's move on to sparring sessions. Craig, Israel Adesanya has certainly taken a lap this week after his utter destruction of Paulo Costa. It started by dry humping Costa in the cage. He then proceeded to breakdance, post-fight press conferences, and then he turned into a meme factory on social media. He has received heavy criticism for his post-fight behavior by people that kind of stuff bothers, which you and I aren't those folks. But the question is, who should have been more criticized? Paulo Costa for his pre-fight behavior or Israel Adesanya for his post-fight behavior?
I didn't like any of it. I really didn't. I mean, throwing up the white belt out of nowhere, and then Paulo Costa goes in there and pulls an eventual Michael Chandler and just lays an egg in the octagon. It was weird. It was weird that Adesanya didn't want to answer the questions about his right pec. And then he did today with his Ariel Helwani, and basically said, I got it here. He told him he got the swelling checked out by a doctor. He just got blood tests done, and I did like a scan, 2 MRI scans just now, 20 minutes ago for my pituitary gland. So we'll get the test back, and we'll see what it is. And then he basically said, well, gyno doesn't happen. It only happens symmetrically, not asymmetrically, which I've heard every armchair quarterback and doctor on their keyboard saying, "Oh, it can happen. It can happen," and asymmetrically. I think it's weird. I think it's something we look into. Don't hump a guy after you beat him. Don't do that. Don't be that guy. But ultimately, do I care? No, it doesn't change my opinion of him.
Here's the deal. Paulo Costa is going to get a pass here, not necessarily from me, but just by the public, because everything that he did, while all the things, and Israel Adesanya made a great point. Maybe if you weren't chasing a fake me around the cage, making videos, you could have been training for the real me, which makes a lot of sense. But whatever Costa did, they're all going to chalk up to he's just trying to promote the fight. Now, where I differ a little bit is I'm from the school of to the victor go the spoils. And when you win, you can take a lap however you want. If I'm the guy, listen, and you're going to hate this, I know.
You don't hump a guy.
You don't, well, okay. But here's my point. If you throw, if you hang a curveball to me and I hit it 500 feet, I'm going to watch it if I want to. And if you don't want me to watch it.
You got to pimp it. You got to
If you don't want me to watch it, then don't give up the home run. So my point here is if you don't want, now it's a little bit of a stretch to say if you don't want to get humped, don't lose the fight. But I guess my point is that I feel better about Israel Adesanya saying I did what I said I was going to do, and now you got to deal with it.
I have to say one more thing. The whole week, and I posted this on Twitter, another Inside Baseball. I read the comments, you donkeys. And this is one comment. I'm not going to mention the name. Adesanya beat a past prime Silva, too short Gastelum, and a compromised Whitaker who had surgery shortly before that bout. Adesanya's almost as overhyped as Costa. Then there was another one. Adesanya fought an Anderson Silva that was not even 10% of what he was in his prime. He fought Calvin Gastelum, who was on a decline. Robert Whitaker, who admitted he went into the Adesanya fight depressed and unmotivated. Another one on the mental side, I saw Adesanya on the interview and face-off kind of intimidated. Are you kidding me? What are you talking about? Like, think before you type something like that. Really give it a little bit of thought before you say that. The guy went in there compromised. You saw what his pec looked like, and he hardly even threw his right, and he absolutely dismantled a fellow unbeaten challenger. And there were a lot of people high on Costa. He was only a slight underdog in that fight. Really give your head a shake. Come on.
All right, Craig, let's move on to our segment this week. We're going to call it, Is He Right? I'm going to tell you some statements that were made by some prominent MMA figures, and you just tell me, is he right? And if so, why? A brief answer works. Number one, Craig, DC, said Jones calling out Blachowicz proves that he was ducking Dominic Reyes. Is he right?
Agreed. He's right.
That's it? That's all you got? I agree. I think he's right, too. I mean, I think you kind of tip your hand a little bit when you wanted nothing to do with the 205-pound division. And the second, now he could be trolling Dominic Reyes, but that's a real meta game on Jones's part. The fact that he's talking about swooping back down and getting his belt means that he's less afraid of Blachowicz than he was of Reyes. All right, Craig, Justin Gaethje said, if I can beat Khabib and Conor, I will have cemented something that is unmatched. Is he right?
Wow. Well, if he beats one of those names, being the first one, yeah. If he beats Khabib, sure. If he beats Conor, cool. But the Khabib win means a lot more. So, yeah, I would agree with that one, too. I think he's right.
I think it's unmatched at 155 pounds. I think other guys have done, Anderson Silva, John Jones, Demetrius Johnson, George St. Pierre. They all have fantastic resumes where they beat guys that at the time were thought to be completely invincible. Craig, Khabib's manager said Khabib nixed a tough season with Conor and that the rematch will never happen. Is he right?
No, he's not right. He's just trying to put smoke on that fire.
Listen, I'm going to reference my earlier comments about toxic relationships between fighters and opponents. And I think that Khabib and Conor can make money without each other. And I think that's probably what they're going to do. All right, Craig, finally, DC says that in 2020, Khamzat Chimaev will be a double champ. Is he right?
Plus 1 year, 2021. He's still not right. If Brandon Moreno hasn't become the UFC's flyweight champ by the end of this year, then there's no way Khamzat Chimaev's a double champ at 70 and 85 by the end of next year.
You know what? I think they're fast tracking this guy. I don't know anybody other than Conor that has got. I mean, this is all in this year now. As we talk about what 2020 was for everybody, and it's the worst year ever. Not for Chimaev. I mean, this kid has used this pandemic to fight quickly, finish guys quickly, and move himself up the ranks very quickly. I think, if he does to whoever's next opponent is, and we believe, we'll talk about this in a little bit, we believe it might be Stephen Thompson. If he does to Stephen Thompson what he did to Mershart, now that's apples and oranges comparing those two fighters. I mean, we might be talking about a fast track here. All right, Craig, let's move on to the social stuff. Let's start with For the Gram. It was on social media this week. Teddy Atlas was holding mitts for Francis Ngannou. So what's the play? Is it improving his MMA striking? Is it a boxing crossover for Francis? What are Francis and Teddy doing?
I mean, this is where it gets a little funky because Francis Ngannou is also buddies with Mike Tyson, who is definitely not buddies with Teddy Atlas. And on that podcast, Francis Ngannou basically said, my plan all along, boxing champion. MMA fell into my lap, so I took the opportunity. I still want to be a boxing champion. I think Teddy Atlas helps you in the interim. But I think if you got Mike Tyson as a buddy and you're training with Teddy Atlas and you've got Mr. No Right Sleeve Dewey Cooper raising his hand as you guys walk out every fight, those are pretty good guys to have in your corner or corners in terms of boxing acumen. I don't like the windmill punches at Jairzinho Rosenstrike to knock him out, but overall, I think this helps, and I think it's probably more telling of a boxing crossover.
Listen, I'm a huge Teddy Atlas fan. I've said it many times. So anytime Teddy gets involved in MMA, I'm excited. Right? Because he comes into my world. I enjoy going into his world. He comes into my world occasionally, and I really enjoy his presence. I enjoy that he, as well as Max Kellerman, have embraced MMA in the way that they have. Max sort of just says it's okay. Teddy really breaks down fights, has fighters on his podcast. So Teddy's one of us now. I mean, that's where he is. Let me ask you a question. Do you think Francis Ngannou is in a boxing ring first, or do you think Teddy Atlas is in his MMA corner first?
I don't think Teddy Atlas is going to be in his MMA corner.
Okay, that's one way to answer it. All right, Craig, let's move on to one Twitter hitter. Craig, we talked about him earlier. The boogeyman, Khamzat Chimaev, who was at one time double booked, one hit quit. Gerard Mershart, speculation was that Damian Maia was going to be his next opponent. But the Underground Whisper Network is saying that Dana wants a main event spot for Chimaev. So it could be Stephen Thompson next. So, Craig, first, what do you think about the matchup? And are you prepared to apologize to me for you getting mad when I wrote Mershart off before the fight and said he was a stepping stone and said he was not a relevant fighter and he was just someone that Chimaev was going to run through? Are you going to make that?
On this International Podcasters Day, I'm going to extend virtual international, like a handshake and a peace treaty. I apologize. I was wrong. I also want to say that in that paragraph that you just went through, I think if Fight Night Picks doesn't work out, we could start a porn site called the Underground Whisper Network. That's a dirty little 3-word combo. And overall, I think a Stephen Thompson fight's a lot of fun. I think a Pettis fight's fun that nobody's really talking about. And I don't want to see a fight with Leon Edwards. Push Khamzat Chimaev. I mean, he one-punched Gerald Meerschaert. That's pretty cool. But again, I'm all in on the hype train. I was all about this guy when he was with Brave. So you can't call me out and say, I'm betting against him. But just don't go too fast because you don't want to regret it.
All right, guys, throw the Reebok kits away. Let's go back to the old days when you could put dude wipes on your shorts, where you could have Condom Depot. Let's talk about the old fighters. Craig, there has been a rumor on the Underground Whisper Network that maybe Nick Diaz might be fighting Carlos Condit. For his part, Carlos Condit says, let's do it. We have some unfinished business. Let's make it happen. Carlos Condit is a Matt Allen specialty, a Matt Allen favorite of all time. So let's break down these guys. Let's talk about Diaz. Let's talk about Condit. Let's talk about Tyron Woodley, because he said that he thinks Nick Diaz is a Hall of Famer. So who of these three guys, or if you want to just talk Diaz and Condit, who's a Hall of Famer out of these folks? Condit, Diaz, Woodley? What do you got?
Diaz had great fights. when it came to the biggest stage in the UFC, did he win the biggest fight? No. So there's that. Carlos Condit beat Nick Diaz. There's also that. Like, to become the interim welterweight champ, to fight George St. Pierre, to have the best montage pre-fight of any montage I've ever seen, that raises the hair on the back of my neck. Go back and watch the montage before UFC 154. Condit, GSP, my favorite fighter of all time, Monsieur Georges St. Pierre, set to lives, lightning crashes. Oh my gosh. Like, I'm getting excited about it right now. I'm more excited about that than I am the question. That's not a slight on you. But who deserves to be in the UFC Hall of Fame? Tyron Woodley does. And then it's a stretch for the other two. And I was surprised. Matt said that this week in our picks for Court McGee and Carlos Condit, to which we disagreed on the picks. And if you can guess, I went with the crusher, Court McGee. But overall, I said future Hall of Famer. Matt said no. Because if you look at the record that Carlos Condit has after that GSP fight, it is straight salt. It's bad. And it hasn't been that great ever since. And he didn't really evolve as a martial artist as he went on. Look at his takedown defense rate. It's if I'm not mistaken, it's 34%. It might be 36%. It's under 40%. And he hasn't really been able to get over that hump. So for me, Carlos Condit, the natural born killer, he's such a fan favorite. I see it in the comments. Everybody seems to love Condit. Everybody seems to love Diaz. But being a fan favorite, does that also mean that you're a UFC Hall of Famer? I don't think so. So for me, it's Woodley based on performance and what he's able to do. For the other two, fan favorites, but not Hall of Famers.
Yeah, I think there was a path for both of those guys. That I'm talking Diaz and Condit. I think that there are two Carlos Condits. There's the Carlos Condit that we wanted him to be and the Carlos Condit that he was. And I think that, he does have a WEC belt. He does have a UFC interim belt. So he's got the gold. I mean, depending on how much weight you put on an interim belt. But he's got the resume. But like you said, I mean, he falls into that BJ Penn argument of like, I was great before this day and horrible after this day. And what does that mean? Again, I'm like Matt in the sense that I like Carlos Condit a lot, and I would be open to him being a Hall of Famer based on what I think about him, but that doesn't necessarily make him a Hall of Famer based on his resume. So if I had to choose, if it was F, marry, kill with the Hall of Fame, I would definitely have to marry Woodley, and he would be the guy that I would put into the Hall of Fame. All right, Craig, let's move on to start the conversation. There's a lot of different ways we can take this to start the conversation, but it all centers around one guy, and that's Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier and Tony Ferguson sort of went into business with each other when they were negotiating for their fight. Ferguson said, listen, give Poirier the money. I want the fight, but we're going to work this thing out together. Poirier has sort of officially or unofficially, according to the Underground Whisper Network, gone into business with Conor McGregor in terms of negotiating a fight outside of the octagon, as it were, an exhibition. So I'm going to ask you two questions. The first question is, do you think that these guys working together is the future of the sport, where two fighters come together to work against a promotion in terms of negotiation? And secondly, what are your thoughts on, quiet as kept, something we really haven't thought about at all, Dustin Poirier being the face or even the president of a fighters union moving forward?
I still like Leslie Smith in that spot. I really do. I think that she might do star value wise. Is she a bigger star than Dustin Poirier? No. Is she in the top 5 all time for UFC significant strikes landed per minute? Yes. She's actually number 3. But overall, she's not as big of a star. But I think she's better suited for a role like that. And there's a lot of different fighters. Not to say that Dustin Poirier isn't, but there's a lot of fighters up there too. So I don't think he'd be the type that would go for a role like that. He's always kind of been the company guy. This is one of those instances where maybe he hasn't been. I don't think we're going to see more fighters trying to hash it out between themselves. You see it sometimes, and sometimes it works, but by and large, it's managers dealing with the UFC and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden you get a fight between Robbie Lawler and Mike Perry that's booked for this year. So I don't see this happening more often. And it's only in certain situations where a fighter has so much leverage, like these two guys at the top of the division. It's not like tomorrow you're going to wake up and you're going to have, I don't know, Gabriel Silva at 135 pounds going, geez, I'd really like to fight Benito Lopez. Can we get that fight going? And the UFC is all over it. That's not going to happen.
Or
But,
the two of them are saying we're not going to fight unless our salary's 30 to show and 30 to win.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of 10-10 or 12-12. So yeah, I don't see it having a trickle down effect or more of an effect than a one-off. But I could be wrong because Poirier-Ferguson, public negotiations, it stalls. Poirier-McGregor, public negotiations, contract slips across the table.
Well, here's the interesting thing. This is my iPhone, right? And what my question for you is, how many iPhones that ring of UFC fighters, when they look down and see Dustin Poirier is calling, get answered, versus when they look down and see Leslie Smith is calling, get answered. So I do understand where you're coming from. I think Leslie Smith has a more intimate knowledge of all the things that go with setting up this thing, but you need a face, man. You need somebody that's got power, leverage, connections. You need Chael. You need Connor. You need Condit.
Like Chris Paul with the Players Association.
Yes. Chris Paul's phone. When your phone rings and it's Chris Paul, you answer. When your phone rings and it's, who's the guy in the State Farm commercials? Cliff Paul, you don't answer. So listen, guys, there you have it. The episode of the Early Stoppage. This episode of Early Stoppage on Fight Night Picks is in the books. Be sure and comment under the video to let us know what you'd like to see next from the show here on YouTube, but also iTunes and Spotify. Craig can be followed at Craig Allen FP. I can be followed at SM Cornerman. The fight has been stopped. We'll see you next week. Craig, say something with you.
Let's get back into it. And also, shameless plug, check out the merch on the website.
Check out the merch.
I got a lot of merch at home.
Happy International Podcasters Day. Enjoy it.